How you doing, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm gonna talk about buying a big rig and some of the things that I wish that I had known whenever I bought my first one. So I'm gonna pass that knowledge along to you, so stick around. All right, so you're gonna have to kind of bear with me. This is a very loaded question that I'm gonna be covering today. And obviously I can't cover everything because there's so much to go over. Each individual case is different. So I'm gonna kind of give you some of the generics that you should think about or you should look into before buying the truck. And I've got my notes here to help me along. So, kind of bear with me. I'll get through this as quickly as I can. I'm gonna be covering things to know before you buy, what to look for when you buy, as well as where you might want to buy. So those are the things that I'm gonna be covering in this video, and I'm gonna kind of keep it as concise as I possibly can. So here we go. So some things to know before you buy a truck are, what application are you gonna use it for? Are you gonna be pulling a dry box, a reefer, an open platform like a flatbed or a step deck? These things make a difference as far as what you should be looking into, as far as wheelbase is concerned, the aerodynamics of the truck, and the gearing ratio. That's gonna be important. And that's gonna be important as to where you're gonna be driving this truck. So you need to have an idea. You're gonna be regional? Are you gonna be local, over the road? That's going to kind of change the gearing. I mean, if you're going to be on, down south all of the time on flatland, then you're going to want some taller gears like 325s, 336s. If you kind of want an all-around gear ratio, then 355s, that's going to do well in the mountains, as well as kind of just an all-the-time type of deal. But you should know what application you're going to be using this for, and that will give you an idea as to what are the different specs that you should be looking for, because not all trucks are created equal. A great dry van truck is not necessarily going to be a great flatbed truck. And you need to understand that the maintenance of the truck is very, very expensive. So something that you need to do before you even start looking is give yourself a base knowledge of how to maintain a truck. There are certain intervals that you're gonna wanna be doing certain things. Like, for instance, a preventative maintenance, which is called a PM, or basically an oil change. And while you're doing that, you grease the truck, etc. But that should be done, that's gonna vary as far as how old the truck is, how old the engine is, and stuff like that. So you need to have a basic understanding of those things, as well as some of the larger components, like, for instance, how long is a turbo supposed to last? This is just very generic, but as a generic idea, your turbo should be replaced about 700,000 to 800,000 mileage marker. Now, it can last over 1 million, it may only last 500,000, but that gives you an idea, so that way you're not blindsided with a multi-$1,000, maintenance schedule that you weren't prepared for. So you go out, you go looking for a truck, and it has 700,000 miles on it, but it looks like that, that the turbo is completely nasty, rusted out. Everything beside it, around it's all rusted out. Well, it's probably the original turbo from the manufacturer. And if it has 700, 800,000 miles on it, you need to know that's something that's coming up. And knowing that maintenance schedule will really give you an idea as far as what you are going to be getting yourself into, basically. So if you're able to go check out the truck and, it's got 500,000 miles on it, well, XYZ costs A, B, C, and you're not... This is not like buying a pre-owned vehicle where you buy the pre-owned, your pre-owned car that's your everyday driver, and, it's gonna last you 2 years, 3 years, 5 years before you need to drop some serious money into it. Even though you're buying a new-to-you truck, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not gonna have to spend $5,000 on it in the next 2 weeks. So I would say, as an absolute minimum, before you even think about this, you need to have at least a $15,000 maintenance fund built up. Now, that does not include the down payment, that does not include anything else other than maintenance. And keep in mind, that is the bare minimum. I would say you need much more than that, but that will get you by as long as you can keep saving and adding to that maintenance fund every single month. If your bills are $10,000 a month and you need to make that accordingly, well, then you're not going to be able to put away any extra maintenance. That's the $15,000, that's just going to start you off. That's not to say that that's going to, last you until it runs out and then you have to build it back up again. You have to continue adding to that every single month, and if you can't do that, then you're not ready to buy a truck, and you should work on other things rather than trying to buy a truck, because it costs a lot of money to run one of these things, run it efficiently, and that way you're not out paying for tow bills and putting it in dealerships that are far away from you, that are overcharging you for everything. So the name of the trucking game is it's a money game, and when you understand that, then you're gonna do much better whenever you buy a truck. Now, as far as what you should look for when you buying a truck, well, in a perfect world, you would buy a truck from an owner-operator that's retiring, that has all of the maintenance records, and ideally did the exact same thing. Like if you're a flatbedder, you wanna buy it from a guy who's retiring from flatbedding. That would be perfect, but as you know, we don't live in a perfect world, so here are some of the things to look for when you actually go to look at the truck. Right off of the bat, you need to compare your understanding of the maintenance to the mileage on the truck, as well as what has been done to that truck. So that way you have an understanding of, you have an understanding of how much you're gonna be putting into it, so you give yourself a better idea. And that way you don't have to drop $20,000 of it inside the first year, and you're surprised by that. If you're prepared for that, well, obviously your chance of success skyrockets. Now here's something else to keep in mind, and you're gonna have to follow along for this one because this is a little math. So don't worry, I'm gonna walk you through all of the steps. But what we're doing is we're comparing the idle time to how many hours are actually on the truck. And the way to do this is take the mileage that's on the truck, and this is just generic, but divide that by 60. That's gonna give you how many hours the truck actually ran going down the road. Now you take the number that you got in the calculator and you divide that by the total hours that are on the truck. Take that number, subtract, just hit minus and subtract 1, okay? That's gonna give you a negative number, but it's gonna give you a decimal point. And then that decimal point, you take the first two numbers, so it's gonna say 0.25, that would be 25% idle time. And that 25%, that's a good number. Anything above that means that it's just been idled a lot, and that's a lot of wear and tear, especially if your truck has DEF on it. If your truck has a DPF system that uses DEF, stay away from anything that's over that 25%. And I would even go as far as to say about 15% is where you want to be when a truck has DPF on it. Now, if it doesn't have DPF on it, don't be scared of a little bit higher idle time, because essentially what the DPF system does is it's basically feeding itself dirty air. And that's what causes the engines to go out, the earlier models, like the 2012 to 2015 or so. That's what causes them to be overhauled at a much faster pace than, let's say, some of the older engines that didn't do it, which they were million-mile engines, or even like the new Cummins X15 is a really good engine, and it's lasting considerably longer. So that technology gap that was there, just be very, very wary. If you have a DPF system on it, it's between 2012, the engine was between 2012 and 2016, and it uses that DEF, but it also has higher idle time, that higher idle percentage. Stay away. And when you're going to look at this truck, ask and see if you can take that truck to a mechanic, or have the owner take it to a mechanic, or bring your mechanic there. Ideally, you would take it to the mechanic, because that way they can look at that thing from top to bottom and they can tell you everything that's wrong with it, whatever has not been replaced. And the mechanics are gonna have probably more knowledge than what you have. Like for instance, I have a 2012 Cummins, the 2250 series, and in that series, the fuel pumps had an issue. Well, I would have never known that unless my mechanic told me. And now we checked it, my fuel pump was updated, but it's little nuances like that that the mechanics who do this for a living, they're gonna have more knowledge than you per se, unless you're just highly mechanically skilled, and you're probably not watching this video anyway. But have it checked from top to bottom, and then something else you wanna do is ask them for an oil sample. See if you can pull that oil sample, send it off to a proper lab, and get the proper results back. And that's gonna really tell you what's going on inside, and that's gonna give you a very good idea as far as what are the major maintenances that will need to be done in the either near future or, you know, everything's going smoothly. So oil sample and have it checked out by a mechanic. If they do not allow you to do this, don't buy the truck. So let's take a break for a second. This video is sponsored by Trucker Tools, and I greatly appreciate it. I've been working with them for a long time now. I highly believe in their application. It has all kinds of tools for all kinds of level of truckers. If you're a company driver, if you're a lease operator, owner operator, or even if you're a carrier, they're starting up their load board. Now give them some time. You know, they're trying to get those good clients, but you can see a lot of the major clients that are already on the load boards like CR England, Swift, and don't be afraid of those names. When we're talking the brokerage side of things, things are a lot different. So they do have some good loads on there. They've got some bad loads on there, just like all the load boards. But check them out, download it today. That's Trucker Tools. And lastly, where should you buy a truck? And this one's a little bit touchy. Just because you go to a major brand name dealership does not mean that that truck is in tip-top shape and ready to go. You know, a lot of times the bigger dealerships and even some of the smaller ones, you know, they make it look nice and pretty on the outside. They paint the frame, you know, they shine up the wheels real nice, and they're preying on your desire to buy that new truck, and they're trying to get you to make, you know, kind of a quick decision, and a bad decision at that. Don't be fooled by just because it looks nice on the outside doesn't mean that that engine doesn't need to be overhauled in the next 100,000 miles. So be very, very wary. Just because it looks good does not mean that it's ready to go. Ideally, if you can fund yourself, you want to buy your truck from an owner-operator that bought his truck new. That would be ideal, because he's had the truck, he or she has had that truck the entire time. They know the little nuances, they know what goes wrong with the truck, they know, you know, what has been replaced, what hasn't been replaced. If you're buying it from a dealer, make sure you get the maintenance records. If they don't have them, don't buy it. But buying it from an owner-operator is going to give you a leg up as far as knowing everything there is to know about that truck. Now, the downfall is it's much harder to get the financing. When you're financing your first truck, it's hardly anybody will touch you, even if you have grade A credit. They want to see experience owning the truck, so a lot of times it's gonna take, you know, something kind of drastic to buy the first one. So you have to have a pretty sizable down payment to get your first truck. Usually in the neighborhood, if you have good credit, you can maybe get it bought for a 10% down payment. Ideally, the banks want to see anywhere from 20% to 40%, so keep that in mind. But that's one of the benefits from buying it from one of the bigger dealerships. They have a lot more access to different financial institutions that will finance a first-time buyer. The finance rate is going to be a little bit higher than usual. It's not like the car situation. These are much higher risk, so percentage is based on risk, and it's going to have a higher percentage. On a brand new truck, you can guesstimate roughly the area of 9 to 13% on a first time buy with a good sized down payment. So that's something else to consider. The mom and pop little bitty dealerships that are just kind of scattered typically in the bigger cities, I would recommend staying away from them unless you're extremely highly mechanically inclined and you know trucks inside and out, you know how to work on them, you know what it is that you're doing. Just stay away. This is going to save you so much time, so much effort, so much of a headache that I don't recommend it. So please just don't go there unless you have a lot of skill in the area of mechanics and you can work on that truck yourself. Because I promise you there's a reason why they're the cheaper trucks, why they have the lowest prices on them. You get what you pay for in this world. So a lot of times those trucks have a lot of problems that are disguised, and unless you have the keen mechanical eye, you're not gonna be able to find it. So in my opinion, you might wanna stay away from it unless you're highly mechanically inclined. Well, thanks for sticking around. This is my truck right here. I've had it for going on 3 years now, and she's treated me very, very well. I'm not the most mechanically inclined, but I've surrounded myself with mechanically inclined people that I can call or that I can take my truck to, and that's something you should definitely keep in mind. She's been very, very good to me, and I'm very thankful for all of those other people, because without all of those other people, well, I don't know where I would be. I would probably be out of business right now. But speaking of business, I've got to go deliver that load right now, so I got to get going. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, click that subscribe button down below. Ring that notification bell so you know when the next videos are coming out. But as always, stay driven.